right, here we are again with Leader Exchange podcast and our Leader Exchange monthly luncheon. Glad you're joining with us today. We're here with Vinnie Venturella. And Vinnie, thanks so much for coming in all the way from San Antonio today. And so thanks for coming. Tell us, Vinnie, a little bit about yourself. Where are you from, number one? I like to always know where people are from.
I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My mom and dad are from Pittsburgh. Their whole families are from Pittsburgh. And so we started out in Pittsburgh.
Well, we may need to keep that down at the luncheon.
Sure.
Pittsburgh fan, I know, from back in the day.
Yes,
so
sir.
That's great. Well, tell us a little bit how you got started. You got 16 books going on 17, but where'd you get your start?
I spent 21 plus years in the Air Force, Special Ops, and I wanted to be a good leader, and I wanted to be a great leader, so I sought out opportunities to do that. One of those opportunities was to speak and teach and train and things like that. So I was asked to give speeches and asked to give classes and things like that, and I said, I should start writing some of this down because a lot of it resonated regardless of group.
And that was while you were in the military
In
or
the
right
military.
outside? Okay.
In the military. As I was in the senior enlisted ranks, I started writing a lot of this stuff down. And then I wrote a book that's unpublished. It's pretty raw, pretty crude, but I had it physically made into a book.
Okay.
That was my first book. And it had a lot of my thoughts on tactical level leadership, not tactical in the war sense, but tactical at the lowest level.
Right.
Because I believe in making the foundation strong. And then from there, I wrote this book I'm going to touch on a little bit today in the speech. And then I think where I got my bug was I was sitting home one day reading the Bible. Old pastor of mine encouraged me to read the Bible every day, and I did.
Yeah.
And
that's a good pastor right there.
It was. He yelled at us one day in a sermon, and he's like, "How do you know it if you don't read it?"
You military guys, you like that kind of stuff.
And I was like, "You go, brother," because I was already reading the Bible every day. And so anyway, I was home reading, and I felt this. It's hard to describe. I put it in the introduction of the book about Paul. I felt a push to write about Paul. And I've written 8 or 9 about biblical characters as a protagonist to leadership. I mean, as you know, the Bible is full of phenomenal lessons.
Sure.
What to do, what not to do.
Yeah, good examples, bad examples, and everything in between.
And so Paul was my 3rd or 4th book. And then I just kept on writing.
That's great.
So
that's great. Well, what were some resources that you would recommend? Your books, of course, but what other resources would you recommend to someone getting into leadership? We'll have some young leaders there today, but young leaders listening to this podcast, what resources would you recommend?
Absent 21 years in special ops or 21 years in the military, there are a lot. I do a lot of reading. I believe leaders are readers. I read, one of the first authors I read a lot of was John Maxwell.
Right.
I love his style. I love how he talks about leadership. And so now in 2023, in the 1990s wasn't as prevalent, but in 2023, there are so many resources online, so many TED Talks, YouTube videos, self-help classes.
Almost overwhelming.
It's amazing how many resources are online for free. A resource has to be a trusted person in your life, pastor, dad, your boss, whomever. And it's been invaluable. I'm 56 years old. I joined the military at 18. I've had a lot of mentors and a lot of folks that helped me along the way. So a resource, not to focus on that word, so to speak, but are the current leaders around you.
Right.
And that's how I got my start and I'm going to touch on that in a speech today, where, you get your start small and then you just expand your experiences and your connections. And before you know it, you're 56 years old, as opposed to an 18-year-old kid.
Yeah.
So I think, and the amount of stuff online, the legitimate authors that are out there, leadership and mentors and guides in
somebody in your life. I love that part because, again, the guy, you know what good leadership is because you've been under it. If you find someone that you've been under their leadership, there's something you can learn from it. They may not be a leader in all different realms, whether there's a coach, a teacher, a father figure, a mother, anybody in your life that can be, that's great. What advice would you give a young leader in terms of just getting started? What advice, other than resources, what advice would you personally give them?
Be open-minded, be a great listener, develop some thick skin, because you're gonna get more coaching and feedback the younger you are.
Yeah.
And that may sometimes that could dissuade people from I'm getting kicked in the teeth, pardon my expression, every time I do something. So being open-minded, being okay with feedback,
right,
and being teachable. But I think the biggest piece of advice is finding what works. Now, a lot of people don't know what works because they've only seen bad leadership, so they have nothing to compare and contrast it to.
Whether it's in a marriage and raising children, they don't have great examples.
That's right.
A lot of times. Yeah,
that's right.
That's fantastic. What in terms of continued growth, it's one thing going back to the young leaders, being able to receive feedback and not pushing back on that, just listening, taking it in, trying it on for size. Hey, is this criticism true about me? And then moving forward. It seems like, and I'm sure I was this way as well. I'm sure I'm still like this today, but you push back on constructive criticism a lot of times without really taking it in. On the other hand, taking it in and taking everyone's criticism can be devastating. So trying it on, seeing if it fits, and then
I think one angle I'd like to talk about that is if the feedback, the coaching, the mentorship is out of love from a respected, trusted person.
Yeah.
A lot of times those three ingredients aren't there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So if I don't have a personal relationship with you, or I don't like you, right, I kind of am fishy about your morality, motives.
Yeah.
So if the person they're delivering it out of love, whether it's hard coaching or not, delivering it out of love, they are man or woman of character.
Right.
And they have the person's best interest in mind, that should be clue in, I'm going to stay hooked up with this person.
Yeah. And then, so not only just for younger leaders, but for leaders that are continuing to grow, you can't rest where you were 20 years ago or 15 years ago. Things are just changing too quickly. What advice would you give for continued growth?
I am not a job hopper. Okay. In the military, you obviously I went from E nothing to E9.
Right.
E9 is the Chief Master Sergeant, highest enlisted rank in the military, in the Air Force. So you just naturally, you get promoted, you move on to different jobs. But in the civilian world, there could be hey, I want to be a director. I want to be an executive director. I want to be an assistant vice president. I'm not in the season I am in my life right now. I'm not job hopping. I say that to say this is, as you progress in your leadership, you need to be exposed to more, bigger, deeper, broader things.
Yeah, you got to be challenged.
Situations, environments, people. If you're still leading the same 3 sled dogs, you're not going to continue to grow. So you have to, and where your boss, your supervisor, your first line manager comes into play is there as much of a supporter as they are as a sponsor.
Right.
They're finding opportunities, whether you're in a different role or not, finding opportunities for you to expand your leadership.
Yeah.
Whether it's a specific project, or hey, there's a short-term thing I'm going to have you take care of, or I'm going to give you an additional duty to expand your leadership.
And sometimes that's self-inflicted. You don't move up because you're not growing as a leader.
Right.
Sometimes you're a boss, the person over you is not seeing it, not making opportunities for you.
Or worse, doesn't want you to rise above them or near them.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's some keep them down
potential
thing, and so you've got to recognize that. But there's usually, if you've got a boss that care about you, you can ask them, "Hey, is there more opportunity for me here to continue to grow as a leader?"
And if they're a good boss, as a student of leadership, I never get upset when people go outside of an organization or into a organization in the same larger company to expand I actually celebrate that. Like, why wouldn't I celebrate people advancing? As a student of leadership, you have to. There's too many people that get upset when somebody leaves, or get upset because they want to go do something different.
Right.
I actually celebrate that.
Well, and you've got the fruit to show for that.
Sure.
You know, people that come back and appreciate that about you, I'm sure. So tell me about mission, core values, because I know that's super important to you. It's embedded in a lot of your books. So tell me a little bit about that. Why do you believe in that? I mean, that has been around for a while, but tell me why you believe in it so strongly.
Obviously, in the military, you know, there is so much focus on mission. Not only the mission of the Air Force, fly, fight, win, mission of the Army, mission of the service. There's the military mission, the mission of that particular unit. So that is the one thing that focuses the entirety of the organization.
Yeah.
Whether you're at General Motors, Air Force, Leader Exchange, the one thing, despite the diversity or in spite of, however you want to, the amount of folks that have different backgrounds, the one thing that unites everybody is that mission.
Yeah.
And so I'm a huge proponent of that. I'm going to actually talk a little bit about mission today. And so it's extremely important, and I embrace it. You don't have to tell me, like I get asked all the time, or when I first got here, like, memorize the mission. I can memorize it.
Yeah.
Memorizing
doesn't mean you
I embrace
it, right?
And I don't need my boss to tell me to embrace it. It's a natural outcropping. I don't care if I'm in this company, that company, or whatever. I naturally embrace the mission.
You know, it's interesting because most of the time when we talk about mission, core values, you're talking to the leader. That's a good twist on that a little bit. You need to be talking to the people who are maybe need to embrace it. Like, hey, it's your job to embrace that mission and vision, and actually help your boss or that your boss knows, hey, he gets this.
Right.
I mean, that's
I consider it table stakes.
Yeah.
Like if I offer you a job and there's an expectation that you're embracing the mission, I shouldn't have to sell it to you.
Right.
I work for a company that has a very noble mission.
Right.
Very noble mission. You don't have to sell it to me. I've already bought into it. Some companies may not have as specific of a focus. So a young person who may not have the wherewithal to understand may need to be given some more guidance and more feedback on how to do that.
By the way, I'm a customer of USA.
Yes, sir.
Love it.
We call them members, by the way.
Yeah, members. That's right.
Yes,
they do a great job. They really do.
Yep.
Always taking care of me in every situation that I've been in. So, tell me about attitude, because attitude, along with mission and core values, I mean, somebody can embrace that, but if their attitude isn't right, so tell me a little bit about that.
This sounds cheeky, but I believe in it. As a matter of fact, I write about it in my 17th book.
Okay.
Attitude, not aptitude, determines altitude. Now, you have to have some intellectual game.
Sure.
But I'm going to tell you, Jeff, if you go across your experiences and you're like, what separated, was it because they were better at maintaining widgets?
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
It's because they had the best attitude.
Yeah.
You give me folks that have phenomenal attitude, there is no limits that organization can go. And I aspire that. I exude that. I have that. I lead by example in that.
Yeah.
I don't even have to think about it. It's just a natural thing that I do because I understand how important it is. And you touched on culture. And then as you build this culture of folks who have ownership of their job, ownership of our mission. You don't have to tell them. They just have a natural ownership. Yeah. You build that, there isn't anything you can't do.
And attitude, man, it is, you have it now, but at some point you probably made a decision, a conscious decision about that at some point in the past, and then it became second nature to you. But I do think there's times when I know I've had to, hey, I can either choose to have a pissy attitude about this, or I can have a good attitude about it and choose. It is a choice at some level. And then how do you correct attitude? Very carefully, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think without knowing the full specifics, and this may or may not apply to everybody, I try to model everything I expect out of others. Yeah. Like we have a requirement to be in the office 3 days a week. I've been coming in 5 days a week since last year.
Right.
You don't have to tell me I will always exceed expectations. Whatever my boss expects of me, I will always exceed it. So I have that. And so part of that, exceeding expectations, a natural desire to exceed expectations, I am hopeful. I'm leading by example.
Right.
So that's the first thing. Now, some people don't pick that up. So you want to, come from love and coach them. And you got to give them, you have to reinforce it. So if you see something good, you got to remind them, great job.
Yeah.
And as you build that, you build those little examples, those little models, you reinforce that over time, it's going to happen.
I've noticed in my own leadership and the leadership of others, we usually look for what's wrong and try to correct.
Absolutely.
Rather than what's right and encourage.
That's right. Hey, my TPS report had 99 things correct.
Yeah.
You told me the one thing that was wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And it's for me, it wasn't out of a, evil intent of any kind. Right. It was just like, hey, you're doing, I assume they knew they were doing great. But these are the two things that could have been better. And if you focus on that, it's deflating for people.
It's a great point.
So I've tried to learn that. So tell me on things that you've seen over the years derail leaders.
When I saw that question, I was like, wow, there is, because it was almost specific. Like, what's the one thing? There are so many things.
Yeah.
So I used to belong to a company that if you do X, you're gone. No questions, you're gone. Code of ethics, if you did X, you were gone. That happens to people.
Yeah.
I think a lack of integrity, regardless of organization, will manifest itself and will leak out, and it will be called something else.
Yeah.
But a lack of integrity, a person who does not stand on a moral high ground or doesn't stand on character, that will leak out somehow.
Eventually it's going to come out.
It's going to come out. It's going to manifest it some poor behavior. Yeah. And I'm not trying to be self-righteous. I'm not trying to be hypocritical. I'm not. From experience, that stuff leaks out. And I could say, if I had to come up with one thing, it's a lack of integrity.
Right. And, it's one thing to make a mistake and admit that mistake, confess, just get it right, as opposed to serial, like
absolutely
just never coming back and apologizing, never coming back and admitting you're wrong. But if you admit you're wrong, usually people are pretty forgiving.
Agreed.
Depending on what it is, of course, in terms of a job situation. So in terms of next generation leaders, you and I aren't as young as we used to be, right? And so raising up the next generation of leaders that are going to be around when we're not around and or when we're getting older, we need some people to lead this country. Leadership is the biggest lack of leadership seems to be the biggest problem, I think. So tell me about that, raising up the next generation of leaders.
I believe most things dealing with people rise and fall with leadership. If you're organization, church, whatever, volunteer, for-profit, doesn't matter. Things rise and fall with leadership. So yes, you have to make a personal commitment individually to bring others up and generationally to help others. Again, I'm going to come back to leading by example, but as a 56-year-old guy, former special ops, my dad was a Marine, Sicilian American. I have a very specific way of, I'm sure I'm viewed by an 18 or 22-year-old. But that 18 or 22-year-old isn't here because he or she is dumb or he or she doesn't have, they are a valued person. And I want to find out what that is.
Yeah.
I want to find out what makes them tick. I want to find out what motivates them.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to find opportunities for that person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I take personal responsibility, Jeff, to get to know that younger person and how can I help them and how can I also learn from them.
That's golden right there, because I think when you get older as a leader, you have had a lot of experiences. You have learned a lot of things the hard way. And we think, hey, it's our job to pass that wisdom on to the next generation without getting to know them, without valuing the fact that, hey, we are in a different culture. We are in a different really worldview in a lot of ways. So how are they leading, and help me learn from you. And then if you're learning from them, they inevitably want to learn from you.
That's right.
So
I believe in starting where they are.
That's good. That's good.
I believe in, so again, going back to the mission, they're in my organization or our organization, the one common mission. So if you can maybe start there and go from there, as well as again, showing personal interest in, hey, I'm here to learn from you as well.
Sure. That's great advice. Tell me, this is your second book, Character, Competence, and Commitment, The Measure of a Leader. Tell me what led to that book. Fantastic book, by the way. I've loved it.
Thank you. A lot of in my thinking and writing, and as I was developing over 30 years ago, was when I developed my core or my foundation, which was that. And I did a lot of thinking, a lot of writing, a lot of tweaking, a lot of speaking, and I kind of fully fleshed that out. And I realized those 3 C's, regardless of who you are, they may not say the same 3. Those are the core of a person.
Right.
And that became sort of the bedrock of my writing. Right. It became
it spreads out from there.
It does. Yeah. Character, competence, and commitment becomes the foundation of virtually how I am day to day, what I model, what I write about. It comes back to, it can touch on that.
Right.
And it wasn't, I didn't start out going, when I'm 56, I want to have 17 books and I want to have, it didn't.
It just started coming.
Once that kind of, I arrived at that, I was like, man, this is pretty powerful.
Right.
And people should hear it and want to hear it. And a lot of folks who have heard my talks, have read my books, they appreciate the simplicity of them, but also the foundational aspect of them.
And, most guys coming out of military special ops are not writing leadership books on biblical characters. Tell me, you already touched on it a little bit before, but tell me a little bit about that, because, man, of course, being in the field that I'm in, the Bible is my guide. And man, but there are regardless, even if you're not an adherent of the Bible, you've got to look at it just from a leadership position. And I tell people all the time, Jesus is the greatest leader in the history of the world. You could argue that regardless of how you look at him personally, right?
No.
So tell me about kind of the journey with leadership from a biblical standpoint.
When I wrote one on Jesus, I actually call it the epitome. All my books have that. It'll say a title, then leadership lessons inspired by the Apostle Paul, Jesus, Nehemiah, David. And Jesus's title, the title for his book is the epitome, because he's the epitome of leadership. As I mature in my faith, and it started back, a billion years ago, starting to read the Bible every day. Then I was a Air Force instructor. I was a professional instructor.
Right.
My pastor knew that. He knew I was into leadership, and he asked me to teach Sunday school. I taught Sunday school for 3 years. I taught an Acts Bible study for a full year, 3 separate times. And I'm like, student of leadership, that never stops.
Right.
I was like, man, this is a treasure trove of just phenomenal characters, what to do, what not to do. And I haven't finished yet. I'm stumbling on these words. All these books I have now, there's a treasure trove of information in the Bible. I still have a few minor prophets, major prophets. I haven't figured out if I'm doing them together or separate. And there's just a bunch of characters I still have to write about.
Yeah, you got a lot of work to do, man.
Yes.
Well, you've got your 17th book in the works, coming out here pretty soon. Yep. So tell us a little bit about that, and we'll land on that one.
Yeah. I call it the red pill on wisdom. And so if you're familiar with Neo and the Matrix, he has the opportunity to stay in non-reality or go join reality. And the red pill does that. And so over my 4 decades of close to 4 decades being an adult, I've picked up some wisdom. My dad, my mom, pastors, leaders, supervisors, and I would write some of these little nuggets down.
Right.
And then Rex said, "Hey, what's next?" And I was like, after Judges, he's like, "What's next?" And I was like, "I think I'm going to write this. It's been on my to-do list. I've got a rough outline. I kind of have, and I want to." And it's almost, his mom told me, it's almost autobiographical, because it's me. It's literally what I believe in. It's at my core. Yeah. And so there's 300 lessons, 1 lesson per page.
Wow.
On just nuggets of wisdom.
And 300 pages?
300 pages.
That's amazing.
And it's as a word count, it's the largest book I've ever written.
Man, if I did that, I don't know how many nuggets I'd have, maybe 10 or 12, but that would make up a book, man. 300 pages?
Yes, sir.
That's amazing.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah, it's a
lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but I use this term to others. It fell out of me. Yeah. It was a joy to write. Not a ton of research, because it was in my head. It was always there. When you write about Moses or David or Jesus, there's a lot of research to do. This one was just already in there. I just had to get it out.
Yeah. Well, Vinnie, thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
All the way from San Antonio via Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So glad you've been with us today. Join us some month for the Leader Exchange Luncheon, and we'll see you next time.